Well, hello there. You are watching the press preview. It is time to see what's making the headlines with the columnist Carole Malone and the political editor of the Liverpool Echo, Liam Thorp. Welcome to both of you. As ever, let's take a look at the front pages. Level up and away, the Metro reports on the criticism facing the Prime Minister for travelling to Blackpool in a taxpayer-funded RAF plane. The Yorkshire Post leads with Levelling Up too, reporting on Labour's accusation that money is being funnelled to Conservative areas. Levelling Up also features on the front of The Guardian, the paper also reporting on the shock resignation of Jacinda Ardern as New Zealand's Prime Minister. The Financial Times reports that central banks are committed to increasing rate rises to curb inflation. Britain has turned a corner, so now cut taxes. That is the plea from business leaders, according to the Daily Mail. The European Union wants Starmer to become the British Prime Minister. That's according to the Eye's front page. The Sun leads with the news that actor Alec Baldwin is facing charges of involuntary manslaughter over the fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The Daily Star has a story about a bus driver, Elvis impersonator, aiming for a #1 signal. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. So let's head straight to our guests then, Carole Malone and Liam Thorp. Welcome to both of you. So, Levelling Up, making a couple of the front pages, Liam. You kick off, if you can, with the Metro. We'll put aside the jet and the safety belt for a moment, but how do you think Rishi Sunak did today?
Well, look, I mean, I'm slightly biased there because I've always thought Levelling Up was a bit of a con, really. I think if you've underfunded and cut billions out of local areas, local government over the last 10 years, and then you have this sort of beauty pageant, or some describe it as a kind of Hunger Games, where these councils and local leaders have to scrabble together, put these bids in, and just really hope that they sort of get the favour of ministers and the government to get some money towards some projects. And as the Guardian's analysis we'll move on to in a second shows, often this does seem to be decided on a political basis. You know, how can it possibly be levelling up to give 19 million quid to Rishi Sunak's wealthy constituency, Richmond, and say not give any money to a number of deprived areas in my area, in Bootle, in Liverpool, in parts of Wirral? I don't understand how that could possibly be anything other than gerrymandering or pork barrel politics. It seems a completely perverse system to me. You should be allocating funds based on an area's need, not based on who the MP is or who they might vote for. And unfortunately, on many of these decisions today, it seems to be done on a political basis. So that's taken aside from, Rishi Sunak's other issues around flying and the issue with the seatbelt. On a purely political basis, it's a deeply unfair process, and it will hurt more and more deprived areas that will be left further and further behind. So, yeah, in my opinion, it's not gone well.
Well, I mean, the government absolutely denies that, but there does seem to have been a shift in the definition of what levelling up means. To be fair, no one's quite known, between a sort of north-south levelling up and a let's help all the nations have opportunity, which is the definition that Rishi Sunak gave today, Carole. But you'd think you hand out 2 billion quid and people would be happy, but lots of areas not, because 4 out of 5 people who've put in bids get rejected. So you've got a lot of disappointed people out there.
Yeah, but it's not over yet. Those bids could still, come good in the end. There's always going to be people who are complaining. And if he, the fact he has given money to Tory constituencies, he's always going to give money to Tory areas. Of course he was. If it turns out that, let's not forget, this is a Guardian investigation. This is the Guardian have looked into this. I'll be happier when I've seen other reports about what has come out of this. I'll be much happier about it. And if it is the case that he's given more to Tory areas than he is to Labour areas, well, that's going to be put right. I mean, I get very cross when going up to the Metro stuff about the private jets. I get really cross about this because this is just trying to knock down a prime minister that they don't like and a politician that they don't like. Of course, the prime minister is going to take private planes. The flight the latest one they're talking about, he went from RAF Northolt to Blackpool, and it took 41 minutes. If he tried to take a train, if the trains aren't on strike, and if he could possibly get one, it'll probably take 2.5 hours. If he's in a car, it could take up to 4 hours. This guy does a hell of a lot in one day. He's got to accomplish more in a day than most of us accomplish in a week. Of course he's going to take private planes. He's not going for cocktails somewhere. He's actually doing his job. He's got a country to fix. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And this petty snittiness about every time he gets on a private plane. It was the same the other week. He went up to do he went up to meet some people from the NHS, which is what he should be doing at the moment as the NHS are going on strike. And he was criticised for that, saying it was nothing but a PR exercise. Prime ministers have to do that, and they have to meet the people who they're governing. And I think this is just silly nitpicking on the part of people who don't like the Tories.
Can I just say on that, I think that actually plenty of prime ministers have got trains around the country in the past. Probably one of the reasons that he doesn't want to get the train is because the trains in this country are an absolute joke, particularly in the north of England, where he's now flown twice to. In fact, one of his own MPs today, Mark Jenkinson, actually pointed out that one of the reasons he probably hasn't got it is because he can't get a working train on the Avanti line because it's been such an utter disaster. It was a bit of a self-own, really, for a Tory MP to admit that they have presided over a complete breakdown of the rail network in this country, which, by the way, Rishi Sunak made previous promises. He made previous promises to upgrade trains.
Destroying the rail industry. The strikers just now are destroying their own industry. And you say they might not be on strike today, but the fact they're not doesn't mean the trains go back to normal. The Prime Minister can't run his business on the vagaries of what strikers are doing and the fact that trains are running. You cannot say he can't take a private plane because the Tories have run the railways down. The unions are doing a very good job of that on their own currently.
Carol, I don't know if you've got any trains in the north over the past 5 years, but long before this industrial dispute began, the trains have been an absolute joke. It's impossible to get around on time. This is long before the strike action ever came. And Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, was part of a manifesto that promised to upgrade particularly trains here in the north with Northern Powerhouse Rail. He's completely and utterly reneged on that. And so it's not surprising that he wants to fly around the country because he wouldn't be able to get anywhere on the trains because they're a joke, and that's not to do with the strike action.
OK, well, it wasn't just... That's why he's taking... Carole, it wasn't just snittiness, to use your word, about the jet. There were questions, too, about this social media clip. Let's take a look.
Hi. One of my New Year's promises to you was to grow the economy. And today we're announcing the second round of allocations from our Levelling Up Fund. And that's about investing in local areas.
Yeah, someone eagle-eyed noticed there was a moving car and no seatbelt. Anyway, it was a brief error of judgment, according to the Prime Minister. But does it need to be looked into, Carole?
No, it really does not. There is a fine for that, OK? So why haven't they just, if that's the case, issue with a fine? Don't make such a big deal. It doesn't need an investigation. He's already admitted he made an error of judgment. He's making this clip. OK, he has to turn towards the person making the clip. You can't do that with a seatbelt on because you garrote yourself. I get it's against the law. I know it is. And yes, he should absolutely pay the fine. But Lancashire police do not need to waste their time investigating this. This is snittiness on their part. Get on with solving crime and charge him whatever fine it is for not wearing the seatbelt.
OK.
Can I say what I think?
Go on then,
interesting about that is it just one final point on that is Rishi Sunak kind of came in as this very supposedly very slick, very good PR operation, but he is prone to quite a few gaffes. You remember obviously him sort of incorrectly pretending to fill up a car with petrol, not knowing how to pay with a contactless card, and now this. These are supposed to be a kind of very polished videos that he does, but he is prone to a few gaffes as well, which is quite interesting.
OK, but he did, to be fair to him, and yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions, he did not answer the questions about ambulance waiting times set by him by Sir Keir Starmer. But today, actually, he did really warm the crowd. To be fair, he'd given them millions in Morecambe in Lancashire, did he not? Carole, just very quickly, on his actual performance today, with people there asking him questions, a very accomplished performance by the PM.
Yes, I think so. He can be. Liam says he's always making gaffes. The guy is human, He's doing some PR stunts and he's actually not very good at them. He shouldn't do them. But, I think he can be a very good performer, and I think he was today.
OK, show you the front page of The Guardian now. Tory areas allocated more cash from Levelling Up Fund. But the picture story, too, is about Jacinda Ardern. As I was driving home, news came through that she was quitting. Now, it seems to be, depends what side of the political fence you're on this. She was going to lose the election, so of course she's going. Or didn't she do well, and isn't she right to quit while she's ahead, Liam?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of, I think she's been an extremely important and powerful world figure. I think that, for me personally, at a time when the world has lurched further and further towards populism and extremism in some of its leaders, I've always found Jacinda Ardern stood out for her kind of calmness, composure, and compassion as well. You know, the pictures that always stands out for me is her meeting people after the Christchurch attacks and her humanity that she showed there. She speaks really well. Yet, of course, you can make a very solid point that there's a very narrow path to victory for her Labour Party in the next election. So I can see why people would say she's getting out early. But on the other hand, you know, I saw someone say today, which I thought was a good comment, it's very rare that a politician actually gets to leave on their own terms and not in defeat or disgrace. So, you know, fair play to her. She's only 42. She's already achieved so much. She can go and have another career now, and she can be very successful at that.
But Carole, you know why modern life for politicians is totally exhausting, you know, not least in a pandemic. And I know you're probably going to criticise her attitude through the pandemic of locking down New Zealand and so on and closing the borders. But cost of living crisis now, sharp rise in interest rates, the FT saying, lower house prices, a rise in crime, you know, no doubt the health issues that we've got here in this country as well. It's an exhausting slog.
Well, of course it's an exhausting slog. Don't go and be Prime Minister if you don't get the fact it's an exhausting slog. You know, all the left are singing the praises of this woman who literally annexed New Zealand and the citizens for nearly 2 years during COVID. She kept up the ludicrousness of zero COVID until 2021. You know, and I remember in 2021, the country was coming out of COVID. There was one case in Auckland and she shut the whole country down again.
She kept her people alive, Carole.
She has left.
She kept her people safe.
Well, she didn't keep people alive because COVID is rampant in New Zealand now. And the reason she's going, and it's a cowardly thing, I think, she's going to get trashed in the polls. She's tanking in the polls. You know, no politician of her stature leaves before an election, but she's leaving because she knows she's going to get absolutely thrashed.
Yeah,
well, this to me, this is cowardice. She's done what she's done in New Zealand for the past 2 or 3 years, the past 2 terms, sorry. And now they haven't worked. Her country's in a mess. It's in recession. It's in a mess. And she's going before she has to take accountability for that.
Okay,
a lot of people would say she's authoritarian, not the liberal she pretends to be.
Yes, and of course COVID being rampant after a vaccination programme is not the same as being rampant before people get a jab. But we move on back to The Guardian. Alec Baldwin charged over this death on a film set. He's not alone in facing charges, but you know, it'll be fascinating what happens in this case, Liam, and also how it might change what happens on film sets too.
Yeah, absolutely shocking case, of course, that happened in 2021 and shocked the world when it did. It's gone on for a long time. It's kind of the legal case has ebbed and flowed. It looked at one point like Alec Baldwin was not going to be charged, and now this news coming out of America is that he and several others on set may face this involuntary manslaughter charges. It's important to mention that America has obviously very different laws to us, and I was trying to sort of get my head around some of it earlier. It looks like Baldwin and the Armory specialist Gutierrez Reed will be charged under a standard called charged in the alternative. So the jury will actually decide which charge they go ahead with. His lawyers have come out and said it's a travesty, that it's a disgrace, that he had no idea that there was a bullet in that gun that sadly killed the cinematographer in such a tragic circumstance. So yeah, it's obviously, you know, he's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, isn't it? So it's a huge story, but there is obviously a tragedy at the start, at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, Liam, sorry, we're running over. Just to say, The Sun, which I don't think we can show you, no one is above the law, is their headline on the Alec Baldwin case. Anyway, lots more still to come, including this story on the front page of The Telegraph. NATO allies tell Germany to stop stalling a deal on tanks for Ukraine. That and more after this break. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, the political editor of the Liverpool Echo, Liam Thorp, and the columnist and broadcaster, Carole Malone. Welcome back to both of you. Let's go to the front page of the Daily Telegraph, shall we? Stop stalling the tanks deal, NATO allies tell Germany. And this, of course, comes ahead of the Ramstein airbase meeting in Germany itself, when they tried to get this package of heavy munitions and weapons agreed and signed off to send to Ukraine, Carole.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely good on them. But, you know, shame on Germany. This is one of the reasons, and I hate to bring Brexit into it, because it's not really about Brexit, but you know, Britain was one of the first countries to actually offer Ukraine help and to send proper weapons and proper armory, and we've been doing it all the way along, and we've been having to shove Europe along with us to make them do it, and they've been very reluctant the whole time. You know, Ukraine, God knows what would have happened to Ukraine if Britain hadn't, right at the very start, sent weapons and then sent tanks. And now we've sent our great big tanks. I've forgotten what they're called. But, you know, they cost a fortune. We've sent them. And it's only right that the rest of Europe and the world joins in. Biden, America has said they're going to help. You know, and it's really important, out of self-interest of nothing else, that we make sure Ukraine win this war, because Ukraine is very near to Europe. And, you know, who knows what Putin would do next? He has to be defeated, and we all have a duty to help Ukraine defeat Russia.
Yes, and, you know, Ben Wallace said we're not going anywhere. He said that Russia needs to understand that the purpose now is to push them back out of Ukraine. It's like endgames time, isn't it? A squadron of main battle tanks, as you said, the Challenger 2s, 3 batteries of long-range artillery, armoured vehicles, thousands of rounds of ammunition, brimstone missiles, which makes the lead for the Times as well. But Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, has said they'll only send Leopard 2 tanks, which makes much more sense as they're in Europe, if America donates its equivalent Abrams from its arsenal. Abrams being very heavy. The Americans suggest they can't even go over some of the bridges in Ukraine and are hard to ship. So it's going to be fascinating at that meeting. Quick, very short bit on the eye and the EU and Sir Keir Starmer at Davos today. Liam.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. You know, Keir Starmer has had an interesting relationship when it comes to the EU. He was obviously, you know, an architect really of Labour's Remain position going into the last election. He's since said, you know, categorically he would not look to rejoin, and he would not look to rejoin the single market. What he is now trying to do is cut a very different path to the what many people feel, including me, is the disastrous results of the Brexit deal that we have in place. He wants closer relationship, closer ties with Europe, and a closer trading agreement. How he's going to do that out of the single market, we'll have to see. But obviously the noises, as you can see from the front of the eye there, are that EU leaders certainly favour Starmer. We've got we've got Guy Verhofstadt saying the West needs to come together around the areas Starmer mentioned, which is stuff around science, tech, research and security. We've got quotes from a Dutch MEP saying, I cannot wait for Starmer. So they obviously want Keir Starmer to be the next Prime Minister and have a closer relationship, because it's in obviously Europe's interest to have a better
Carole, both of you, I've run out of time.
We don't
I do
want to
apologise.
close the relationship.
Carole and Liam, thank you both. Back in a moment.